Welcome to Teambuilding Cultures, the podcast designed to deliver tools and tips for improving team communication, collaboration, and fostering a culture where teams thrive. Now, here's your host, Beverly Hathorn, owner of Strategic HR Consultants.
Hello, listeners, and thank you so much for joining me for yet another episode of Team Building Cultures. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Christine Thorpe. Dr. Thorpe is the CEO of Stronger Tomorrow Wellness. She's a certified health education specialist and wellness coach. And today, she's going to be talking to us about breaking the taboos, supporting women's health at every career stage. Dr. Thorpe, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to hear you talk to us today and help educate us on these taboos. This is not a very often visited topic on my show, so it'll be something new and interesting for my leaders. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here, Beverly, and to talk with your audience about something I think is really important, particularly when we're looking at the span of the workplace and the role that women play. And when we look at the lifespan of women in the workplace, I look at it from menstruation to menopause and all that comes in between. And how are women embraced each day and each part of their life cycle to be able to fully be present as well as fully actualize in a workplace that understands all the nuances that are part of who we are, but it's just a natural part of life. So I present the topic of breaking the taboos, looking at women's health across the lifespan in the workplace, as a very important topic for us to begin to, of course, educate our audience about what it means to be a collective with women in the workplace. And why are these taboos? Why is this such a challenge? So I look forward to digging in a little more deeply with you as we go on with this conversation.
Awesome. I too, of course, being a woman, am
Mhm.
very interested, but I am happy to address this topic because I don't think it's something that we often
Mhm.
think about. And women tend to, like I say, just because I carry that doesn't mean it's not heavy. And women, we tend to just go through and do what has to be done
Mhm.
without expressing our discomfort or the difficulties that we experience. As women, we are taught to do what we have to do. We're mothers, we're
Mhm.
employees, we're leaders, we're wives, we're supporters. We allow people to lean on us and we stand strong because we know that we have people in our lives that need to lean on us.
Mhm.
So we can't break down because we're the tree. So just help us understand some of the things that go on in that, particularly in our
Mhm.
career stage, that maybe we need to be more attentive to, and that maybe people in the workplace need to be more aware of.
Well, you make a great point. We're the tree that people lean on. So how about this? Who do we lean on? And I think that we take for granted that we're seen as anchors of stability at all times, and that's supposed to happen. But how can we begin to create a culture that's open, where women can feel safe, supported, and confident about talking about what's going on in their lives without being marginalized? And this requires some significant growth in moving away from being individualistic in how we show up and turning it around and becoming more collective in how we engage with each other and being truly level and looking at each other as humans, not as superhumans, not as cape wearers, not as super strong strength carriers because we come from a long line of strong ancestors, but we're also at a time when we are afforded much more than our ancestors. And we really do have the opportunity to lean in and get that support The badge of honor is not in walking around carrying it ourselves, but saying, I'm extending my arms for my support and to support others so that it's mutually beneficial. And the way I look at this support is through the lens of wellness. And there are multiple dimensions of wellness of which we function as individuals, but is also essential to our collective functioning. And when I talk about the dimensions of wellness, I talk about the emotional wellness, financial wellness, social, spiritual, occupational, physical, intellectual, and environmental. And these are all multiple dimensions that we carry with us in every move that we do each and every day. But this is not just as a solo entity. In our workplaces, our environmental wellness impacts how we interact and work with each other. Our social wellness impacts how we socialize, how we develop our support systems with each other. Our physical wellness, being able to show up at work and be physically well, being able to function in our work day to day is a challenge. And when we're looking at women who are in the workforce and in those workforce ages, whether it's from 18 to 65 plus, we're going through our own, journey as women that's part of our natural life cycle that often gets truncated and forgotten. And we're indoctrinated into putting it so far back and pretending it doesn't exist in order for the outside world to be more comfortable. And I believe that it is time where we work with our leadership to adjust, to welcome the nuances and the grace that comes with having women in the workforce and understanding the added value across the board and not seeing these as complications and problems that get in the way of the bottom line. So when I talk about these taboos, I'll talk about it from the space all the way from menstruation to menopause. That includes mental health challenges, cancer, that includes infertility, pregnancy, postpartum depression. Also talking about menopause and perimenopause. These are important aspects of who we are that we live through on a day-to-day, but how is the workforce embracing us so that we can always, feel supported and continue to rise to the occasion and also give us grace at times when we need it in our journey and not use it as an opportunity to punish or discredit us for not being 110% all the time. So this is how I approach it. And I like to lean into this as more of a collective give and take versus women as a solo entity. There's a support system that's needed.
Yes, yes, very interesting. Let's expand on some of the things that you just mentioned.
Mhm.
You said, our own journey is truncated and forgotten.
Mhm.
So, can you kind of like give us a little bit more on what you mean by that, and maybe give us an example or two, or of when that happens, or how you've seen that, particularly in the workspace?
I've seen it in so many different ways. My goodness, I have seen it with the most recent story I've heard from a woman, a client, who spoke about the impact of going through perimenopause and menopause and being in meetings and sweating in her meetings and having her colleagues look at her and wondering what is wrong with her and having to step back and say, listen, I need to be honest here. I'm going through menopause. Hot flashes and sweating they are byproducts of the season that I'm in. It doesn't mean that I should be taken out to pasture and I'm done. It's just part of my journey and the journey of women who are part of this lifespan. And it's actually a blessing to get to this age to be able to have these experiences, albeit uncomfortable for a woman as well as those around, but it's part of the cycle of life. So it was more about educating her colleagues versus carrying the burden and the shame, or even for some women talking about the brain fog they experience, whether post pregnancy, and the expectation that coming back to work after 3 months, you go from 0 to 60. And don't drop the ball, don't mess up, because that means that your job is at risk. And where is there grace built in to a phasing in and an understanding of a transition back into the workplace so that the life that you just created and brought into this world to perpetuate humankind plays a very important role in the grand scheme of our human existence, but also the opportunity to go back into the workplace and be able to get grace and time to ramp back up so that you're not feeling like I've missed out on maternity leave. I don't know, and no one's trying to help me, or I'm embarrassed because there's an expectation that I should be performing higher than I should, or I forgot. I simply forgot. I'm a little sleep deprived because I had kids. Having a baby kind of does that to you, and it changes your lifestyle and your whole perspective on how you get to show up each day. It's not just about you. So these are some of the examples that I have experienced with women, along with women who dealt with in vitro fertilization, and a woman who had to take a lot of time off from work because she had to go through, the procedures of getting shots to be able to become pregnant, mental health challenges that have grown exponentially since the pandemic, and being able to manage life and the pressures and the stressors that have come with it, and leading into employers to say, hey, it's not business as usual. There's a need here. How are you going to create a support system to not just get by, but to help your employers feel connected, supported, and to be able to thrive? It does impact the bottom line positively when you do it the right way.
Understand. That's quite a concept. And again, I don't think that is something that is often considered or looked at in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who you have just enlightened,
Mm-hmm.
those who the light bulb just went off and they were like, oh my God, I'm guilty. Where do we start? How do we get started on being better?
We we have companies that have employee resource groups that are hungry for these conversations. And not only are they hungry for these conversations, but they're hungry for their leadership to come to these conversations and hear more about what their needs are. I'm speaking with someone recently, and there's a desire for more conversation about this topic. And she told me that her superior said, oh, we did a survey and nobody said that there were any issues, so it's fine. Um, Quantitative surveys are one thing. Being able to have qualitative information, focus groups, and discussions in a safe manner. This is the work that I do. I'm able to elicit this information, be able to convey this to the leadership in a confidential, anonymous way so that they're enlightened to really know what's going on with their teams. And when you say, as a leader, I really value you, you're an important employee, don't just tell me, show me.
Show me.
That demonstration is critical. Challenge that value that's placed on employees. As a leader, when you hear that, what's that next step you need to take? Maybe you, as a leader, need to do professional development. And this is where people like me do that training to really bring you up to speed on some of the needs that employees are having, particularly female employees, to be able to learn, wow, this whole concept of menopause, I never really talked about it out loud. Now I'm hearing about it. What could I potentially do? Well, this is where policies, procedures, and practices can be developed. There are opportunities for change. The thing is there a desire and a fire behind it? Is there enough of a challenge to the value of your employees to be able to push this envelope further? And when you see that, you support your employees, you support your staff, you have a more productive and engaging workforce, reduce absenteeism, reduce presenteeism. There's so many components that are impacted, and you actually get to improve your bottom line. And that's what every company wants to know. Are we having a good ROI this quarter? Well, are our employees doing what they're supposed to do? Are they working? If you do all these triangulations of data, as well as give them a work environment that makes them want to show up and thrive, you will see the results. And there is data that supports that.
There's absolute trustworthy, reliable data that supports that. Happy employees deliver such service.
Mhm.
Happy, engaged employees, that's going to transfer over to your customers, your clients, your bottom line, your ROI. Everything
Mhm.
is going to be uplifted when your workforce and your culture supports your
Mhm.
workforce. It's the as the kids say today, the maths. It's just you know, it's just really easy to figure that out. So let's talk a little bit about culture since we're talking
Mhm.
about employee engagement and everything. How do you think either working the processes that you're talking about and attending to the issues that you're talking about, how do you think that that would actually affect the culture? I know we mentioned the surveys, and we all know that employees don't always trust the survey process. The survey process,
Mhm.
number one, has to be a third party. It has to be a third party survey. And if you're going to talk about women's issues and you get things like we don't have processes for menopausal or pregnancy, returning from pregnancy, you're going to know that that's coming
Oh,
from the
yeah.
women that are menopausal or, returning from pregnancy. So, they're not going to speak up. So,
Right.
how do you think, this affects the culture? How do you think we can impact the culture?
And you make a good point here. It's third party. We need people who are outside who are able to bring that impartial voice back to the leadership. And what's really critical is the engagement of the leadership. It's one thing when the leadership, yeah, we support it, just run with it and give us the results later. It's another thing when the leadership puts a face and a voice and says, yes, we're not only saying we support this, we're going to put feedback we get into action. And here are some steps that we're looking to take. And we'll continue to give you feedback so that you see that this is an active process and see that what you're sharing with us, we take seriously. And in addition, the workforce has changed. This new generation of employees coming in, they're not willing to bend and settle for less than what they want when coming into work for a new employer. If you want to attract and retain good talent, you need to listen to them when they're interviewing. Interviews are no longer that one way where we give all the answers that we think you want to hear and we ask the obligatory, question back that makes the employer feel like they're extra special. It's the potential employee saying, well, can you talk with me about your workplace culture? What is it that keeps people here? They're going to ask more of those meatier questions that might have the interviewer lean back a bit
Hmm.
and say, I need to ensure that I create an authentic, inclusive, and empathic workplace community because this incoming generation is not inclined to stay in environments that don't help develop them and don't help to make them feel like they want to be there. They will be quick to jump. And I think when we begin to shift our perspective on what the workforce is looking like, um, we'll begin to see that employers need to grow and expand what they've done as the norm into something new because there's a new team coming in who's going to have a greater expectation, or else they will be the group that is working, but just the bare minimum because they're not feeling engaged and involved in a place that really cares about the whole person and
Mm-hmm.
not just the one who shows up to push the red button all day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Mhm.
mm-hmm. Yes, employees nowadays definitely, candidates nowadays definitely want to
Mhm.
be sure that they're going to be valued. They're going to be valued and that they're going to be important and that they're not just, to your point, another cog in the wheel. That's
Exactly.
not what they want. They want opportunities for growth and
Mhm.
development, and they want to know that they matter to their employee to their employer in order to give you what you need from them. So,
Mhm.
and they have lots of opportunities. They have choices, they have options. And if you don't come to the table with what they're needing, you're gonna miss out, especially when you're talking about your high performers.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's right.
yes, when you're talking about your high performance, you got to get with it. So, as a health and wellness coach, how do you help organizations and businesses do better? What do you do, and how do you come in and help?
So there are a couple of things that I do. One, I like to in particular work with the the female leadership in organizations, because I often feel, as we talked about at the top, we're the tree and everyone leans in on supporting that group. That's the group that is still eager to grow and learn. I create mastermind groups, subgroups within these companies. And whether we do it through a 4-week education mastermind group, or I create, and I do this around golf. I'm a golf enthusiast, and I'm a firm believer that through golf, and not just golfing, but it really touches on the community aspect and the dimensions of wellness that are fundamental to my framework in helping people to grow professionally, to grow intellectually, to grow socially, for example, in their wellness as it relates to their profession. Um, Additionally, there are opportunities as well in working with organizations who say, okay, we need to look at our policies, procedures, and practices. And this is where our strategic planning process around wellness and DEI comes into play, where we work with these organizations to come up with data-driven metrics across these dimensions of wellness that impact how each employee is working and thriving in that workspace, and being able to show the results of policies and procedures and practices that will help to improve who they are and their culture of their organization, and being able to tout that publicly because we've made changes in these key areas as noted by our employees, and working closely with HR and hopefully their DEI leadership. We're able to create these new movements in the organization, and these have resulted in, because you're going to need that information to entice the incoming talent pool. So when we kind of tie it that way, it's like, wait a minute, the folks you have are not going to be here forever. You need to be able to sell something and have something in place in your community that is your reputation that precedes you.
Awesome. Awesome advice. And that's a wonderful value that you're bringing. And again, when you're talking about the candidates of today,
Mhm.
if you want that long-term loyalty, and if you want them to stay and to give all that they have to give and not sit down at their desk and immediately start looking for another company to work for, you've got to bring something to the table, and you have to have something to offer. And health and wellness is a big thing, along with flexibility and autonomy, and that's what they're looking for. So that's a wonderful service that you provide. And so for those who are listening and would like to get in touch with you, how would they do that? And I understand that you have a gift that you'd like to offer our listeners today.
So my website is stronger-tomorrow.com. You can reach me by email at christine@stronger-tomorrow.com. And right now I'm looking to take some complimentary discovery calls, 15-minute complimentary discovery calls, to talk through some of what we've talked about through this podcast with Beverly, and looking at some of the ways you could educate and normalize with your team wellness, particularly as it relates to women in your workplace, ways to lean in to your leadership, to be able to engage them to take the next step forward, and how to create a more authentic, inclusive, and empathic workplace community, enhancing your culture and building your reputation. So I'm looking to take folks to have that quick 15-minute call. Let's get some few points grounded there. But that's where we are, and looking forward to really making that change more concrete. This is not just for the folks working now, but we have folks that are going through high school and going through college, and we need to prepare the workplace for them as well. And there's a lot that we can do to really take the baton and pay it forward in the right way. So let's get to work, folks.
Yeah, let's get it, people, so that you can prepare for this generation of candidates that's coming in, so that you have something attractive to offer them. So we've been talking with Dr. Christine Thorpe. She's the CEO of Stronger Tomorrow. She's a wellness certified health education specialist and wellness coach. And she's given us a lot of information today about breaking the taboos and supporting women's health. So a lot of valuable information. And thank you so much. We will be putting her contact information in our marketing materials. And it's been a great conversation. information. I am Beverly Hathorn, your host and owner of Strategic HR Consultants. And if you would like to hear more conversations like this episode, and more on building a stronger team, please subscribe to my podcast on YouTube. You can find it at Strategic HR Consultants, or you can find the Team Building Cultures podcast on Apple and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next upcoming episode.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Team Building Cultures. We hope we have delivered helpful and enlightening information to help you create your dream team. Join us next time.